So, good morning. I'm happy to see you. I'm not happy with the circumstances, but I hope you're all doing okay in terms of your own personal safety. I know you're covering a war zone, but I wish you all well. I will start with a short video, and we'll go further to my presentation, please. Now, Jason? Abduction, hostages, and my nation is bereaving. This tragedy has inflicted almost every home in Israel. Somehow here you know somebody who lost his life, who was wounded, or is under captivity as a hostage in Gaza. And it will be a long and drawn-out campaign against Hamas, which is basically a long drawn-out campaign against ISIS. I'll show you, with your permission, some data, updated data. 5,000 rockets, missiles launched at Israel. 2,800 fell open in areas on the sea. 350 were intercepted by Iron Dome. And we had 80 direct hits. 30-plus communities infiltrated, most of them evacuated now, with huge tragedies. We know you follow up about 1,300 killed and 3,300 injured. Amongst them, people from 36 nations projected. We'll show you a map of all the flags. I will just mention them: Australia, Austria, Azerbaijan, Austria, Azerbaijan, Argentina, Belarus, Brazil, China, Chile, Canada, Denmark, Eritrea, Estonia, France, Germany, Hungary, Italy, Ireland, India, Kazakhstan, Mexico, Portugal, Poland, Philippines, Panama, Romania, Russia, South Africa, Spain, Sri Lanka, Sudan, Thailand, Turkey, Uzbekistan, Ukraine, United States, and United Kingdom. Still, a lot of the data needs to be verified. Over the last 2 years, the border with Gaza was extremely calm. In relative terms, Israel has taken enormous steps to calm down the situation and ease up the pressure in Gaza. It has opened up its borders, a major growth of trade between Israel and Gaza. Over 20,000 Palestinian employees came into Israel every day to work in Israel in various fields of employment, breaking bread, bringing money back home. You could have seen economic growth in Gaza. International investments went in through the international community, mostly UN and other agencies, in order to supply the necessary infrastructure for Gaza. There was no reason at all for this flaring up, which ended in the worst tragedy that was ever inflicted on the state of Israel, and the highest number of Jews killed since the Holocaust. Highest number of Jews killed since the Holocaust, including Holocaust survivors who went through the worst atrocity in history. I will read you a quote from a Zaka volunteer. Zaka is an NGO that identifies bodies and deals with what we call last mercy of respect. His name is Moti Bokachin. He appeared yesterday on Israeli TV. And he said, "A road that takes 10 minutes to drive every day took us 11 hours. Dozens of vehicles all along the road, some upside down, some burnt, and in every vehicle there were lifeless people, murdered in cold blood. They, the Hamas, threw grenades into the vehicles, blew them up after they murdered the people inside. We found a lot of murdered people in the ditches on the side of the road who were trying to escape, and they shot them and they fell into the ditches." One of my own advisors was mobilized to remove bodies. I spoke to him last night. He found a family of 5 tied together, hugging each other, shot and burnt. Nothing can speak more than anything than this tragedy. I was wondering what they prayed before they were all shot together. Mother, father, children, babies. The injuries that were found on the bodies of the killed, the people, the removing teams, the rescue teams, which I met in the last 2 days, mostly in Sderot yesterday, found signs of torture on the bodies like anything they've ever seen in their life, and some of them are for decades dealing with pains of war and terror. Kibbutz Be'eri has a unique story. As you know, 10% of the kibbutz was killed, lost their lives. Kibbutz Be'eri was one of the most popular places for people to move towards that region and find new homes. But Be'eri is a unique name. Be'eri is the nickname of the founder of the Zionist labor movement in Israel. His name was Berl Katznelson. Berl Katznelson was a philosopher and a leader who was Ben-Gurion's partner in establishing the labor movement. And his nickname when he wrote articles was Be'eri. It's in his name. It was a beautiful kibbutz, epitomizing a socialist communal life of huge success, huge magnitude, and so are so many of the other kibbutzim. In Sderot, I found a spirit yesterday, enormous spirit of human beings in the shelter. Sderot has been attacked time and again for years and years, has suffered thousands and thousands of missiles. We were telling the world every time, in every round, that this is impossible. And the world kept on repeating the slogan, disproportionate Israeli response. Look at the quotes from world community leaders or world leaders and foreign offices, disproportionate response. Every time this havoc was inflicted on these villages and towns and Sderot, we were told disproportionate response. I'm asking myself whether the international community and the international media is now understanding what a false interpretation of the reality there was. Do they now believe us that we are faced with one of the most cruel enemies on earth, clearly ISIS? I want to tell the story of Vivian Silver. She's very well known in Israel. Vivian Silver, age 74, probably hostage in Gaza. She was one of the biggest well-known peace activists in the country. She advocated peace between Israelis and Palestinians, Jews and Muslims, endlessly. She founded an NGO called AGIC, A-G-A-I-C. She was a great leader. She disappeared. She was from Kibbutz Be'eri. So a fuzzy 30-second video released by Hamas to show that they returned an Israeli woman and her child is a simple distortion of the worst moral equivalent. So we are not retaliating. We are targeting. We are targeting the enemy in order to uproot the capability of the enemy to carry on with this campaign of destroying Israel, trying to destroy it as part of an empire of evil which has its claws all around us, from north, with Hezbollah, from the south, from Hamas and Islamic Jihad. Look around us in the entire region. Look at the havoc that they have created everywhere Iran has touched, in Yemen, in Syria, in Iraq, in Lebanon. This is exactly what I spoke about in the joint session of Congress in the middle of July, where I explained that it was always our dream to make peace with our neighbors, but we cannot accept terror. Unfortunately, the world has seen the worst atrocity of terror in quite some time. So Hamas has carried out war crimes, crimes against humanity. It has chosen to conduct its war against Israel, hiding, as always, within populated areas, using the population as a shield, using mosques, shops, houses, anything of civilian lives as their center of activity. And that is why we're operating to uproot this infrastructure. We are very cautious in the way we operate. The IDF uses all the means at its disposal in order to reduce harm to the population. For example, many resources are invested in gathering intelligence, in trying to locate the enemy separately from civilian population, in evacuating the civilian population from the center of the battle, in warning citizens, in monitoring humanitarian situation. But Israel will defend its people and do whatever it takes with an iron fist to change the reality. I want to thank President Joe Biden wholeheartedly, and the American administration and the American Congress for their unanimity in protecting and supporting the state of Israel and the people of Israel. America is a great friend. President Biden is a great friend, standing by with us in our hour of need. Over the last few days, I've spoken with numerous world leaders who've expressed their dismay, their disgust, their outrage at the tragic attack and its consequences. I believe it's now time also to hear religious leaders all over the world express and condemn this horrific attack. And I also believe that the press around the world needs to look at the reality. They must declare and call Hamas a terrorist organization without ifs and buts, without explanation. If families in Toronto were massacred in the same way, I'm sure the press would call it massacre by terrorists, by terrorist organizations. These are not freedom fighters. These are terrorists, the worst enemies of humanity that one can imagine. I call upon the international community unequivocally, make clear and loud condemnation of Hamas, just as you condemned ISIS. They are one and the same. Make clear that Hamas carries full responsibility and accountability for the well-being of the hostages and demand their immediate release with no conditions at all. Support Israel in words and in deeds. Designate Hamas in its entirety as a terrorist body. Finally, I want to say that the people of Israel have always shown their capability of getting up from the darkest hour and rising as lions and fighting back and showing incredible spirit of unity and friendship and solidarity. I see it all over the nation. I see it in the huge amount of volunteering, in the huge amount of mobilization to the army, in the huge amount of doing good to each other, of helping each other in so many consequences and so many spheres of life. I encourage my people, I bless the people of Israel. We shall definitely overcome. We shall definitely be victorious. We've always done so. It will take time, but we shall overcome and we shall be victorious. I met the families of the hijacked and kidnapped citizens of Israel. It was extremely tragic and extremely painful. So many people live in a reality of a nightmare, not knowing their whereabouts and the real facts of their loved ones. Each and every one of you can imagine that. You've met families. Israel will do whatever it can to bring them back home as soon as possible, safely. But this requires an immediate call to the international community not to sit idly by and do whatever it takes to bring them back home immediately. As President of the State of Israel, as I ask you all to tell the stories of the victims, I ask you all to remember it, because there is a short-sightedness in the cycle of media and news, but the pain will remain forever. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amy, Times of Israel.
Hi. You've spoken with a lot of world leaders over the past few days, gotten a lot of support.
And wait, just say your name and where you're from.
Sorry, I'm Amy from the Times of Israel. How concerned are you that that support will wane, that the tide will change the longer this goes on, the higher the death toll in Gaza rises?
Well, this is exactly the moment of truth. Nation must stand up to the truth. I just heard the comment of the Chancellor Olaf Scholz of Germany, speaking with moral clarity. He expressed moral clarity as to the situation. We expect nations in the world to express clear moral clarity regarding the situation and this terrible massacre.
ITV, please. 1 second.
Sorry, there's something with your mic. Yeah. You see this picture? I think it speaks for itself. The baby caught in Be'eri. I think this tells it all.
President Herzog, Raghi Omar from ITV News in the United Kingdom. You spoke very passionately about saying that Israel was not retaliating but targeting with regard to the operations in Gaza. But even President Biden, who spoke so personally and passionately with regard to what was happening in Gaza, spoke about the importance of the laws of war and the humanitarian situation within Gaza. So with that in mind, what can Israel do to alleviate of this conflict on 2 million civilians, many of whom have nothing to do with Hamas?
First of all, we have to understand there's a state in a way that has built a machine of evil right at our doorstep. It's an entire nation out there that is responsible. It's not true. This rhetoric about civilians not aware, not involved, it's absolutely not true. They could have risen up, they could have fought against that evil regime which took over Gaza in a coup d'etat, murdering their family members who were in Fatah. There's a short memory in the world. Israel evacuated Gaza unilaterally in order to show that it's willing to make peace. I was a member of that cabinet. We said to our nation, this will be Hong Kong of the Middle East. Well, reality has turned into a tragedy. Okay? Therefore, I must say that this situation impacts the entire vision of people as to the ability to adhere to the same old rhetoric. We are operating militarily according to rules of international law, period, unequivocally. But we're at war. We are at war. We're at war we are defending our homes. We're protecting our homes. That's the truth. And then when a nation protects its home, it fights. And we will fight until we'll break their backbone. Please.